USA's arrogance is off the charts. So says a friend of mine, James Wood. Welcome, wherever you are, to another of my takes on China. James is also known on X as the Commie Pommy, and in fact he's right, but only half right. Arrogance combined with ignorance and topped off with a layer of hypocrisy would be a better way to describe much of the reaction to China's military parade. We've had former ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, deny China's sacrifices in the war, and we've seen Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, if that word can be used to describe such ignorance, accusing China of rewriting the script on the war, telling us we should read more books. Now, we're coming to the USA's ambassador to NATO's denial of China's sacrifice with this comment in a post that I've linked. James has challenged this US ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker, for a comment he made on Fox News. We all know Fox is entertainment, proven in a court of law, and nothing more. But let's be honest, despite having celebrity guests such as Gordon Chang, who get China wrong every single time he's on there, it really doesn't get any less newsworthy or less analytical than this. The US ambassador to NATO made several rash statements, not rash because they were wrong, but rash because, as James pointed out in a response, they were so wrong they were completely laughable. It's Fox again showing they have the power to entertain, but at the same time it's also very worrying that they'll have 1 million people view this and believe it's correct. Let's dive into the details of the 4 claims that Mr. Whitaker makes. China's parade showed tech stolen from us. They couldn't fight us if they tried. We're the only superpower and we must protect the American dream, he said. Now, starting at the last comment, James pointed out that the lifestyle they're protecting is nothing more than a life of debt, opioids and gun violence and scraping by paycheck to paycheck. We'll come back to that. He then goes on to say the obvious, something that can be seen by many of the comments following the military parade, such as, it's no wonder they're so butthurt watching China's rise. And he points out that the USA has no compromise, there's no negotiation. In fact, as James so rightly points out, everything is cast in terms of fighting and winning, but they don't always. It illustrates a mindset that defaults to conflict as a measure of strength. Washington seems unable to imagine multipolar coexistence or competition through peaceful development. Instead, it reverts to military comparisons, a hallmark of a system that has long thrived on war-making and interventions abroad. Keep rowing that sinking ship and lying to your own people is James's advice to Whitaker. Lying to the American people is now an art form, and Whitaker seems to have mastered it. But let's break down the claims and James's response to them. Number 1, stolen tech. James's answer to this was, China leads the world in international patent filings and spent $3.6 trillion on R&D in 2024. That was 2.68% of GDP. It's built its own sat-nav, Beidou. 2022 it did that, and it carried out the first lunar far-side sample return, Chang'e 6, and these are independent achievements, not stolen ideas. I'd also add, says James, or I add that stealth, hypersonic, drones, laser, radar technology, much of which was on display during the parade, doesn't exist in the US today. And if we're really going to be honest, what he saw on the parade is almost certainly not leading-edge technology. There'll be more in production and in research now that the US can't hold a candle to. Which brings us to point 2. They couldn't fight us. Again, James pointed out that the US war games on Taiwan show only partial victories, and only then with massive US losses. Dozens of ships, hundreds of aircraft, tens of thousands of personnel. The People's Liberation Army Navy is already the largest with more than 370 ships. China fields operational hypersonics, the DF-17, and that is deterrence, not weakness. And I'd like to add my own comment to that. If the US can't beat the Yemenis and haven't learned from some very ignoble departures from places like Vietnam and Afghanistan, failures in policies in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and a dozen other African countries, then it doesn't matter what the ambassador to NATO thinks. History already shows that China most definitely could fight the US, and the US most definitely couldn't win. There would only be losers when they went nuclear, which would be their only chance of winning. Number 3, the only superpower, biggest economy on nominal GDP. Yes, James and I agree, but that's not worth the paper it's printed on. By purchasing power GDP, China is number 1, and it produces 29% of global manufacturing output while being the world's top exporter. The world is multipolar, not unpolar, James said. I'd venture to suggest that there's more. The US isn't capable of producing anything in bulk other than weapons, and they've proven even there they're inefficient and too slow to keep up with their own demand. They've created it. China, on the other hand, is producing enough for much of the world's needs, so much so that the US and EU are accusing China of overcapacity. Sorry, NATO guy, you can't have this one both ways. Either you have a great economy or you don't. And the next point proves you don't. Point number 4, we need to protect the American dream, says the NATO mouthpiece. The reality is an American nightmare, not a dream. As James pointed out in his response, the US reality is $18.39 trillion of household debt, 770,000 homeless in 2024, life expectancy under 79, 105,000 drug overdoses. This dream is in crisis, it's not flourishing. And as I mentioned in the last point, the one about being the only superpower with the biggest economy, you have military doing the job the civilian police should be doing because your president says crime is out of control there. There are queues in the food banks and people living on the streets with violent protests almost every week. There are, according to which definition used, somewhere between 8 and 146 firearm incidents just in American schools this year alone. Now, this is another important thing for Americans to take note of. They are lying to you. They're pretending it's getting better by redefining interpretations. If it was a school and someone got shot or shot at, then there's a gun event. Redefining this doesn't make the American nightmare any less real. The same goes for crime. What was a recorded crime a few years ago is being redefined as a misdemeanor today. These new definitions might help statistically, but they won't make victims feel any better or any safer about a reduction in crime statistics. If a beggar in the street has his or her cup of cash stolen, it's not a crime. If a shoplifter steals $900 worth of goods, it's not a crime. If a prostitute is raped, is that a crime, or will they treat that as a breach of contract? The American dream is most definitely not aspirational, and people who want to fight for it are delusional or misinformed at best. Most of the people I know in America would fight to change it. The ambassador to the UN must be one of the delusional ones. To dismiss China's progress as theft, to claim it couldn't fight, and to assert US singular supremacy ignores the reality, says James. Coming from the US ambassador to NATO, the arrogance is more striking than the analysis. Should we redefine analysis and change the wording? And if we do, what would be better wording? Where Fox News is concerned, entertainment is better. Where US statistics are concerned, misinformation or propaganda would be appropriate. There is certainly little in the way of serious analysis coming from Trump's fan base and administration. Thanks for watching my take on China. Thank you, James Woods, call me Pommy on X, for your contribution to this. And I'm sorry we didn't have time to get together for a live stream because James is really busy, but we will do again soon. See you all next time, and bye for now.